Hello, 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 and welcome to the Shelly Show. I'm Shailendra, and you're watching this simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and all the other platforms that are connected to this one. I hope you're safe and observing the protocol in your area so that we keep each other healthy, safe, and secure. 5G, something that is really, really close to my heart. I started my career in a telco. So as we've grown from GSM to 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G, I thought it would be a very good idea to understand how 5G is going to impact artificial intelligence in the coming days. Um, this one being one of my favorite topics. So what we understand with 5G is that it is going to be about 20 times faster than 4G. It offers just not the fastest speed, but because of its low latency, 5G speeds will allow developers to create applications that take full advantage of improved response times, including near real-time video transmission for sporting events or security purposes. Additionally, 5G connectivity will allow more access to real-time data from various solutions. So, um, one of the things that comes to mind is self-driving cars, which will directly be connected, which should be connected, and there should be no time when it is not connected to the servers or to the cloud, and that's very, very important. I believe that AI, that the various machine learning models will improve with the speed, decrease latency, and increase in capacity that 5G can provide. Okay, guys, now for you to watch this episode and other sessions that I run on Emerging Technologies Live, I would request you to follow me so that you can be alerted when a live session is on. This gives you an opportunity to talk to my guests, ask questions directly from my guests. So please, wherever you are, whatever you're watching, just press the follow button. If you're watching on LinkedIn, Twitter, subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're watching this on Facebook, then please, please, please share this or like and share this with other groups which are artificial intelligence 5G focused groups. Okay, before I go ahead, please let us know in the comment section, where are you watching this from? Which country, which city are you watching this from? This episode from? I think I've got a good coverage across the Asian continent, Europe, and ANZ. So let's see where people are coming in from. And are you watching in from US, where it is late night at the moment? But anyways, tell us where you're watching this from. Without any further ado, let me bring in our guests. Like always, um, the AI Insight series, this time trying to understand the impact of 5G on AI. I've got my first guest all the way from UK, Imtiaz. He's the founder of AI startup called Deep Learn Strategies Limited, and is working on applications of AI like towards fintech, ESG, metaverse, and utilizes 5G on daily basis. So he's one of the people who will be very, very interesting to learn from on what he's doing with 5G in the space. And he's a regular speaker. He speaks at World Economic Forum, and he's regular on our show, on our AI Insight series as well. So, without any further ado, let me bring in Imtiaz. Hi, Imtiaz. Welcome to the AI Insight series. How are you doing?
Hi, Shailendra. Pleasure to be here again. Looking forward to the session.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. So, give me just a minute, and I'll bring in other guests as well, so that we start having a conversation full on. So my second guest is Tony Moroney, all the way from Ireland. Tony is the founder and managing partner of Beta Digital, a specialist strategy and digital transformation advisory firm. He's also a co-founder of Digital Transformation Lab, a think tank based out of Cork University Business School, comprising of experts from industry, academia, and consulting. In addition, Tony is a program director for digital leadership at the Irish Management Institute. So without any further ado, Tony. Hi, Tony. How are you doing? Welcome to AI Insight series. How are you doing?
Thank you, Shalendra. Delighted to be here and good to see you too, Eltmas.
Good stuff. No. Very good. Quick question. Tell our audience one thing interesting about you that not many people know. And you just told us something before we started the show. So go on.
Okay, so I practice martial arts and I'm a black belt in Japanese Jiu Jitsu.
Good stuff. So for Japanese jujitsu, I always get it wrong. Yeah, so we should be scared for this episode.
Not at all. You're in Australia. I'm in Dublin.
Imagine the technology, right? You're sitting all the way in
Yes.
Ireland, and
I'll see
India.
you in the metaverse.
Good stuff. So the next thing we need to do is how we can interact with each other physically, so that we can hit each other through the network. I think that's where we should be focusing on. Okay, let me get a third guest very, very quickly so that we can start the session itself. My third guest is Annapurna Pradhan, who is based out of Orissa in India. For those who don't know, Orissa is one of the states in the eastern parts of India, just below Bengal, if I'm not wrong. I've got my geography right. She's currently a PhD research scholar at NIT, Roorkela, preceded by over 10 years of experience in academia as an assistant professor. She's currently working on ultra reliable low latency communication, which is URLLC, and we will talk about that in details in the session as well, using machine learning and deep learning techniques. Apart from that, consultant for various startups for developing machine learning based microservices. She's a public speaker, like each one of us, on international platform, and a chief mentor of the Machine Learning Club at NITR, and well versed with volunteering activities worldwide. She's also the brand ambassador for AI Exponential Thinker for India. So without any further ado, let me bring in Annapurna. Hi, Annapurna. Welcome to AI series, AI Insight series. How are you doing?
Hi Salendra. Hi Tony and Imtiaz. I'm doing good.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much.
So tell us one thing interesting about you not many people know.
Yeah, that's a quite interesting question, but uh, let me say that I'm a very good dancer. Not many people know about it. I'm a trained classical singer here in India, and also trained in musical instrument like tanpura. I used to play a lot. And apart from that, one interesting fact I want to share with you that I love talking. I love talking to people, sharing knowledge, and
So
discussing
one thing
ideas.
that I'm saying that on the live show, that before we end the show, we would like to hear you sing a little piece from any song you would want to sing. And for people living in India, this month has been quite upsetting because we've lost Bappi Da and we've lost Lata Mangeshkar.
Literally.
So it might be a good idea to have you sing one of Lata Didi's song, if
Okay,
you're up for it.
definitely.
But anyways, let's quickly get into the session. So 5G is going to have a huge impact. One of the use cases that comes to mind is that if the 5G rollout is done across the countries, very, very quickly, we would be able to broadcast very clearly. So things would become very, very simple. The other thing is you could play games in real time. A lot of things can happen. So any use cases that comes to mind, and I will start with Imtiaz. Imtiaz, give us a use case that could be a game changer, or give us a use case that 5G could change the game and it could become very, very easy for us to use, to see.
Well, thank you, Shailen. I mean, there are very many of them. Perhaps one of the very high-profile ones would be the metaverse. I mean, the immersive technologies, as you mentioned, the low latency. Well, with 4G networks, the problem we have is the latency of the network means that technologies such as augmented reality, virtual reality, and the hybrid that's in between, the mixed reality, struggle to work due to latency. They give people that motion sickness feeling in part due to the latency. And so it's a real game changer in enabling ultra low latency, which will mean the rendering, etc., the near real time experiences, and a massive device to device capacity, increasing capacity of the IoT, etc., which will mean that 5G enabled glasses will be able to connect seamlessly and transmit ultra low latency in terms of these experiences, and increasingly the ability of AI to be on the edge. I know we're going to discuss about this later, but to be on the edge of the network, closer to where the data is being created. And therefore, all these things happening simultaneously together are going to in turn enable the metaverse. So that's a very important factor for 5G. And it's not just against 4G, but also, unfortunately, many of the places, including parts of the US and Europe right now, are on what's called non-standalone 5G, which Annapurna will be very familiar with. And so it's really a race now to get to standalone 5G networks, because that's where the magic's going to happen.
Okay, to the audience, guys, any use case that comes to mind, 5G and AI that you've seen in your part of the world, because 5G is around now. Well, I was very excited. I think last year when I bought a 5G phone, and I was sitting in, I was going on the streets of North Sydney, and I checked my speed, and the speed was whopping 350 Mbps, and I was like, shit, this is speed, this is good. Anyways, Annapurna, any use case
Yeah.
that comes to mind, a game-changing use case that could make a difference?
Yeah, I can say it's a smart factory or factory automation, because industrial revolution, what we have seen for past few decades, the today we can say in this era, we can have something game changing advancements in industrial automation. Some remote factory operations, they are automated. The production has been going on and on, and the inclusion of this AI based technologies to automate all the process, inclusion of robotic automations and centralized control, and analyzing the various aspects where we can include the automated features to combiningly develop the product, or combiningly improve the production, combining the total scenario where we can increase the profit level. It's enormous. And we can also say that it can range from various scenarios, like we can start it from like healthcare solutions. Also, there is another very good aspect, very good area where this advancements, we can feel the major advancements due to the wireless communication is going on. So these kind of application areas are changing, and it is the number of research what they are going on in these fields. We can see that there is very groundbreaking research is also coming up, and some research like AlphaFold and everything, they have shown very much good starting point to carry on what we can include into these areas of research, like smart healthcare solution and industrial automation.
Good stuff. Before I go to Tony, to the audience, there are a lot of, I think there are around about 50 people watching this episode at the moment. Guys, if you have heard or any use case that comes to your mind, please put that in the comment section and I'll take that. So please think of any use case. And I know there are a few people who I know are focused on 5G and AI who are watching this. So guys, please, your use case, you want to put it in, I'll take that anyways. Tony, what do you think? Any use case that comes to mind?
Yeah, look, I think they're all great examples. I mean, look, undoubtedly, immersive customer experience, machine to machine connectivity. I suppose one that intrigues me is the whole auto industry, in terms of potentially having autonomous vehicles, having vehicles talk to each other. So your car telling my car there's a pothole or there's ice around the corner. So I think when you put that together with smart cities, the potential is just enormous in terms of how we live our lives. So I think everything from immersive experience to connected to just intelligent way of living.
Interesting. One more thing that comes to mind at the moment is, and Imtiaz, you mentioned about metaverse with the VRs and the ARs going forward. I think it will be a game changer. And with 5G, the speed, I think we would be able to do a lot of stuff in near real time or real time. Anything that comes to mind, any particular use case that we can define before I get on to the next question?
Yeah, I think in general this near real time is key, because whether it be, for example, there's an example from China in 2019 when, using a 5G network, the surgeon successfully conducted brain surgery on a Parkinson's patient It was 3,000 kilometers away. That's almost 2,000 miles, right? and it was successfully conducted. Near real-time robotic surgery, surgeon 3,000 kilometers away. Amazing. That's like science fiction, right? And then the point that Tony raised, and coming back to your point, Shailendra, about autonomous vehicles, because they'll also, of course, be operating AI on the device, on the car, in real time, but the ability to communicate with each other and the objects around them with 5G. So, for example, in parts of London, and I'm sure in other cities around the world, they've been putting 5G masts in some of the lampposts. And that means that, of course, vehicles can communicate with the things around them and also with each other, because they have to successfully navigate around obstacles, etc., and communicate what's the condition of the road, what's going on, and so that they can adjust behavior accordingly. Wouldn't it be great if the rationale of autonomous cars is safety, that you're actually telling each other, the car in front is telling those around it and behind it, I'm going to be slowing down. I'm going to be slowing down because I'm going to be turning right before they even hit the brake light. So they're already broadcasting through 5G to everyone. So even if you're out of line of sight, even if you're 3 cars behind, you know there's a car in front of you that's going to stop and turn right or turn left or whatever. Or the one behind you is telling you, I need to overtake and accelerate because I've got an emergency. Or there's a lot of fog and bad driving conditions, and still you can be like navigating and understanding what's around you. So it's a real game changer in that sense. In the metaverse specifically, I mean, yeah, your imagination is the limit. Your imagination really is the limit. It can be a virtual pop-up bank manager. It could be, remote healthcare, retail, gaming. Experiencing going in transformed e-commerce, whereby you're going to a virtual store and you're seeing the item in augmented reality or virtual reality, and seeing how it maybe fits on your virtual body, see what it looks like against you, which is probably going to reduce returns, hopefully, back to the store, and also be more environmentally efficient. Because now the stores don't need to stock up in huge amounts of physical stock without knowing what the demand is, right? Because a lot of stock gets unsold and then gets destroyed, and it's a huge environmental and economic wastage. Depending on who you believe, the figures are anywhere from $300 billion to $1 trillion a year the retail sector loses on unsold inventory that struggles to sell. And that is huge environmental wastage too. So we can really start dealing with a lot of these issues through the metaverse or making it better. So, the imagination is the limit on the metaverse. The other big thing will be mixed reality, because I think that's where Apple and others are going to launch mixed reality glasses next year, probably Meta as well, Facebook, which means that this digital physical convergence is really going to become a lot closer, or a reality which is you could be walking around the street anywhere and you could be getting mixed reality interactions to tell you this is what that store has. That store could be inviting you in. Here's that restaurant. Here's an interesting restaurant. You could see the menu in 3D, what you like, order, already booked, bang, and the food is ready for you when you turn up. It's just so many exciting opportunities that the imagination is the limit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We're just scratching the surface at the moment. Coming to Tony, to you, do you think 5G is going to drive the adoption of AI significantly, very, very quickly? What do you think about that?
Well, I think for me, when I look at industry, it's not any one technology that's the driver of real change. It's when a number of technologies come together, and it's when a business can understand, actually, if you put 5G, if you put IoT, you put AI, you put all these things together, suddenly you can start to re-envision what the business looks like and start to think about, well, actually, we can bring this business in a totally different direction than it is today. I think the real risk is that if organizations just decide, well, let's overlay 5G as another technology onto our organization, that will only go so far. The real trick is to sort of say, when I put these together, what does this mean in terms of the business of the future? What does it mean in terms of the opportunities it presents? And what does it mean in terms of risks as well? Because look, while there's opportunities, there's always risks as the other side of it. So I think the opportunity for 5G is huge. I think in terms of every organization is talking about, being closer to customers, having that, connected experience. they're also talking about, having those insights. How do I have real insights and real time, as Influence says, real time insights on my customers? Because if I don't know and I can't understand, what my customers really want to do, that's going to be a challenge for me in the future. So I think 5G, AI, putting them together as part of a suite of measures to reinvent your business, absolutely, I think there's huge potential.
No, I totally agree with you. It's all about automation, how everything works in real time. And if it is not automated, it is not going to work. And to make it automated, it needs a pipe. And that pipe or that network is what 5G brings to the table. Annapurna, what do you think? Will 5G quickly drive AI adoption? What will be the impact on the overall AI? Because I think we were up until last year, we were quite restricted with the network capability and how strong it can, and how a lot of things were not possible. For example, even after COVID, we could go live, and the networks had to hold up. Otherwise, lots of those live conversations or real time conversations would have fallen apart. What do you think about adoption using 5G for AI?
Yeah, actually, if I can say, there are various potentials of machine learning which can support these 5G requirements. Like we know that when a communication network needs their own definition, so in that condition, the algorithms and tools of ML for or machine learning for specific use cases of communication network is actually, we can say, the research is in infancy. So most of the concepts of ML for the communication network or optimizing any of the objective while overlooking some of the constraints like latency, link storage, and processing overheads. So all these concepts need to be refocused. Like a more concerning point, if I can say, is the modest interest towards a cross-layer approach. That means when we can think the potential application of machine learning for various 5G fields. So the layer of optimization that we are thinking, that should be intense. Like for example, when we are thinking about the application of deep learning methods which can recognize some of the system parameters for source coding, like extraction of CSI information for wireless signals, or enabling some of the intelligent physical layer based communication system. So in those particular conditions, we can say that combining the intelligence of these physical layer or with the upper layers of wireless network can provide a flexible and intelligent network, or we can say it's a cross layer intelligence sharing like architecture, if we will include this ML based solutions. And it can be some interesting future research topics also. Similarly, if we can
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
keep
if
going.
you can, yeah, go ahead.
No, no, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think similarly, if you can think about the challenges in wireless communication, so collecting the information, making decision, and providing some of the optimal solution for these complex problems are really challenging tasks. As you have already mentioned regarding the environment, like COVID scenario at those particular time, we have a lot of challenges, and these environments are not known prior. So adaptability of these able models are very much important with the dynamics of the environment, with the dynamics of the data we are collecting, or with the dynamics of the situations what we are facing for the communication perspective. So we need to have a proactive behavior or proactive protocol while we are including ML based solution into that.
Now, I'll come to that in detail in a minute, but before that, Imtiaz, before I go to Imtiaz, actually, guys, all those guys who are watching this, it doesn't harm to just press a thumbs button so that, more and more people can watch this episode. Wherever you're watching, whatever platform you're watching, just like it, share it, whatever you want to do with it. But please, please, please promote it as much as possible, because people should learn more about AI and 5G, and that is why I get all these guys from all over the world who are spending their time to actually just explain to you the art of possibility. So please like, share, press the subscribe, follow button, whatever it is. Plus, please do that. Okay, Imtiaz, what do you think about the adoption of AI? Will 5G actually speed it up? Will quickly push it significantly up? Because in my view, yes, it is. It's 20 times faster than 4G, right? So, what do you think?
I think on both, in multiple areas, it accelerates it dramatically. First of all, as Annapurna was saying, on the network itself, you need AI technology, machine learning, deep neural networks to run the 5G network. It's a very complicated network. It's open source. It's software driven, unlike 4G and 3G networks and its sort of predecessors. So in the network itself, you'll have things also, you'll have a unique element for 5G that's different from the others called network slicing. And network slicing would actually enable a dedicated service level agreement to an end user, which could be a hospital, which could be a manufacturing facility or some other commercial organization, whereby they could have virtualization of service, and you actually dedicating different streams. I'm trying to simplify it for the audience, but imagine it as different streams of the service: voice, this bit for video, this bit for VR and AR, as examples, and IoT, and you're actually slicing the network and giving them different guarantees and service level agreement. So they know if they, for example, if they have a lot of video, a lot of virtual reality, they need the high speeds reserved for that on the capacity. So that will go through. So it actually allows you to fine tune and manage, and then you're managing that with AI, with deep neural networks, etc. So much of the network is going to be AI led. And then the point that Tony made, which was real time, that means that, or near real time, that means virtually a lot of the interactions are going to be on the fly. So imagine this: you're walking down a street, you've got your 5G enabled glasses or your 5G phone, and retailers around you or restaurants or whatever can give you offers that are relevant and personalized to you, because maybe you've got a loyalty card with that store, digital loyalty card or whatever, you're on their system, you're on their scheme, and they can actually interact with you and personalize offerings to you on the fly. So real-time engagement, which is relevant to the user there and then, the customer there and then, is also the world we're going to move to increasingly, not historic. Yeah, exactly, not historic event driven, and that will also apply to healthcare, etc., with real-time, near real-time monitoring, with wearables, etc., that you can predict in near real time. The point that Annapurna was making about manufacturing, which is the ability of a smart factory. Smart means internet connected, but an intelligent one, an intelligent factory, because that means it's got AI as well as being smart, would actually be able to predict that there's an outage about to happen, an unplanned outage, that there's a high risk one, and take a preemptive action to adjust the machine or ramp it down to prevent that outage. So it can optimize on energy costs and energy consumption so that it can run more off-peak production at off-peak when the prices are lower versus at peak. Find ways to make the plant more efficient or the operations more efficient, to reduce carbon footprint and electricity consumption. So many changes, the smart grids, etc., which will be AI enabled. The big thing is that increasingly with 5G and the IoT, therefore scaling, because 5G not only the speed and low latency, enabling this massive increase in traffic, and as Tony said, machine-to-machine communication, massive exponential increase from 4G, and that's with standalone 5G networks, which will mean that increasingly AI will be on the edge of the network, on your mobile phone, on your 5G enabled glasses, or maybe a combination of the two, on your smartwatch, on your devices and sensors around you, which will mean things become intelligent. When we say intelligent, I'm not saying at the level of the human brain, but enough to give you a meaningful journey, an interactive journey. So everything is going to become interactive and near real time. So it's going to make things more efficient, but more responsive. So right now, without trying to be crude, but a lot of the devices around you and the IoT devices are dumb. They're reactive and not dynamic and responsive or preemptive. Going forwards, they'll be able to adjust to your preferences and adjust to making scenarios more efficient and better for you and predicting events before they occur, damaging events, which will help mitigate risk. So yes, AI is going to massively increase in this era of 5G and IoT. So shall we call it the AI OT?
Okay, so let me come to Tony. Tony, does that mean that the business models and it's going to impact people, or people are going to change the business models that they're running today? Is it going to have a huge impact on digital transformation as well? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, look, I think digital transformation, excuse me, is an interesting one in that, most organizations are talking about it, but, my belief is that most organizations haven't defined what they mean by it. And I think, organizations, have a habit of just overlaying a technology onto the organization and calling that digital transformation. For me, it's around, how do you re-envision where the business needs to be in 3-5 years' time? How will you compete in 3-5 years' time? Because you're not going to compete the way you do today. And Imtiaz mentioned a whole range of possibilities. Well, if you're not thinking about those possibilities in terms of what does this mean for our customers, what does this mean for our business model, what does that mean in terms of the type of mindset and skills and culture that we're going to need, and what does that mean in terms of how we need to change? And the emphasis is on how, not what, right? Because what I see happening all the time is a rush to what, so a rush to solutions, as opposed to standing back and sort of saying, how can we transform to be relevant and competitive? Now, if you take the new players that come into the market, they start with, well, what's the customer really trying to do here? And how do we create that great experience, whether it's immersive or whatever it might be? And they work back from that and sort of say, well, what does that mean in terms of the type of organization we need to be, which is a much different way of thinking. So I would challenge any organization out there to sort of, think of the future, think of 2025 and sort of say, well, if that's what the world will look like, how do we get there? And how can 5G, IoT, edge, machine to machine, how can all these things help us? And to what purpose are we doing it? Because without that clarity, the risk that organizations run is it's just another add-on. And then they're sitting there wondering, well, why didn't that change the organization? Well, they never set out to change the organization. They just changed a technology. So, to my mind, digital transformation, yeah, it's a great term. But unless we define what we mean by it, unless we're clear about what that means in terms of how we need to transform, the emphasis tends to go on digital with very little on transformation.
So let me ask you a question there. Do you see a lot of organization implementing or thinking, or when you're doing digital transformation, are they being futuristic? Are they thinking 2025, 2030? Or they're just doing it for the sake of doing it because they have to do it because someone else, because the competition has done it?
Well, look, I tell you, the last year and a half has been, absolutely amazing in terms of, you see all these headlines about 5 years of digital transformation in 9 months or 6 months, whatever. And to my mind, there's been 5 years of digital sales and, maybe 5 years of digitization, which is doing what you've always done, but just doing it via digital means. But that's not transformation, right? Transformation to me would be, well, if we think about our business, so take the metaverse as Imtiaz mentioned, or we take healthcare that Annapurna mentioned. What will that industry look like? And actually, industry is even the wrong term. What will that look like in the future? Because the competition can come from anywhere. Right? Now we start to think differently about the business. And we need to sort of say to ourselves, well, look, if that's the future world and this is where we are, how do we improve the digital maturity of the firm? And that's across every spectrum. It's not just process, technology, and people. It starts with mindset, it's culture, it's how we think about the business, it's how we organize around the business. Because, look, a lot of our organizations, they were born pre-internet and they're run by people who were also born pre-internet. we tend to specialize in silos. So, as organizations got bigger, well, we'll have an expert department in this area and this area and this area, right? Whereas digital is pervasive, it's across everything. And unless we think that way, we're going to put digital in as another silo. In fact, organizations do. I go into organizations and they say, well, there's the head of digital over there. And I said, well, is that person in a different organization? Or they even talk about, well, actually, we have a strategy and we have a digital strategy. Well, why don't you just have one strategy that actually takes account of the fact that the world is digital? So I think organizations need to do a bit of soul searching on this one. And I would wager that organizations could learn a lot from their digital native employees. Because, look, we've had to learn our relationship with technology. But I have a 24-year-old and a 20-year-old, and their relationship with technology is totally different. Right? I don't know why they would call it a smartphone. It's a smart experience. They're online with their friends using all these sort of gaming technologies. They're going to be the future in terms of customers, entrepreneurs, everything else. And the way they think about the world is different. So I think organizations would be well got if they considered the views of these young digital natives that they have working for them in terms of, well, tell us about how you see the world in the future. Because look, we might get there if we read a lot about it, but they get there because it's how they live their worlds.
Good stuff. Actually, talking about people who were running their businesses pre-internet, I had a good argument with someone who said to me, this was 14 years ago, and they said to me, Shelly, we've been doing this for last 140 years and have been successful. What makes you think that we should change? This was one of the three retailers in Australia.
Yeah, well, look, I think being successful is one of the biggest barriers to change. Because if you are successful, do you really want to take a risk? Particularly if you're the CEO and you've only 2 years to go, you kind of say, well, no, my legacy is intact, so I'm not going to change much now. But look, you look at something like Blockbusters, who totally missed the wave in terms of streaming, and Netflix saw the future. Blockbusters didn't. Right? So yeah, just because we've been successful in the past, as they say on investment advice, past performance is no guarantee for the future. Well, business performance is no guarantee for the future either. And unless you're thinking about your business in terms of it's a dynamic business in a world that is hyper-connected, hyper-digitalized, and unless it's changing to reflect that reality, well, sooner or later your business is going to be irrelevant and you will go out of business.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. Well, guess what? That company who didn't want to have a website now has a full-fledged online services. Anyways, we'll get back to that later. I'll come to Imtiaz. Imtiaz, you tell me, how is it going to impact the business models? So, do you see new business models emerging out of it? But before you answer that question, guys, if you've got a use case where you see 5G and AI working hand in hand, please put that in the comment section. I'll actually talk about it. We'll have a chat about it. But if you're yourself involved in it, even better, because then we could have a conversation on that. So please put your questions and also your use cases in the comment section, and don't forget to press the like button or share button or whatever it is that you can do to support the episode. Imtiaz, what do you think? Is it going to change the business models?
Absolutely, and I'm going to echo what Tony said, and Tony made a key point now, which is that one of the big shifts that we've seen as a consequence of COVID and the COVID crisis has been that those businesses with a strong digital footing perform orders of magnitude better than those that were purely physical. So pretty much everyone was being forced to go digital in most cases. Excuse me. Now, with the advent of standalone 5G, which standalone is the iteration that will be, if you like, the pure 5G, which is not piggybacking on 4G. We're going to see a lot more of that going forwards by the end of this year and next year. And then that in turn driving the 5G enabled glasses, etc., is going to mean that there really isn't, physical digital convergence is going to occur at a new level altogether. So as Tony said, rather than saying, oh, we've got a digital strategy somewhere over there, and here's our non-digital strategy, hang on a moment. Actually, they're going to be unified, because it is going to be a world where digital physical convergence occurs. And you're giving the example, Challenger, of the retail sector. Well, many retailers say, yeah, we've got a digital strategy, a physical world strategy, and omni-channel for combining them as well. And we've got different levels of service, etc. between them. Hang on a minute. there's research that out there that shows that 80% of purchases made in some of the in-store retailers starts with a journey on mobile, right? So actually, browsing before they go into the shop on that retailer's website, or doing a search on Google or whatever, and finding what they want, and then going there maybe. So it already happens, and it's going to happen to a new order of magnitude. Like yourself, Shalindra, I won't give the name of the retailer, but it used to be one of the UK's biggest, used to be being a keyword, apparel, clothing retailers. And I met the CTO a number of years ago, and I was telling him about work I was doing on deep neural networks and how it could be applied for recommendations, combining computer vision with NLP for personalizing, recommendations to people. And he said, "Oh, not more this AI baloney. It will never work. Our stylists are going to making the perfect things that our customers want, and we put them in there." And I said, "How do you know customers want them?" "Because we're telling the customer this is what they need. This is what they have. And we're putting it up there in our stores. We don't want all this AI baloney recommendation systems." In the meantime, Amazon was eating into them, eating into them, because Amazon, even in 2012, 35% of its sales were being generated by recommendation algorithms as far back as 2011 and 2012. And of course, it expanded and it devoured a lot of these organizations, and then a lot of startups came up, fashion startups using AI that grew rapidly on mobile. ASOS and others, and in Germany, there's a very famous one whose name is kind of eluding me, but they use very effective deep neural networks. And so over time, the offerings changed. And so now that CTO has left that organization, they're struggling, they're shutting down the stores. On his LinkedIn profile, he's put AI expert, I love AI. So how the world changed. Now, this is going to be a new order of magnitude, because it's the example that my at London Business School, my MBA professor who studied his MBA at Stanford, and he said, and I might have given this one before, but I'm going to do it again, that when the calculator came out, and you had the sidewall manufacturers, right, and they'd be there for centuries. And so, Shalindra, you were talking about someone saying, like the retailers, you say, we've got 100, 200-year history. Well, a lot of them in the UK and the US gone like that, even with their 200-year histories. Woolworths in the UK being another example. Now, with the sidewall, and they were just at each other as competitors, focused on each other. Oh, that one's making brass finish, I'll make a chrome polish finish. And I didn't see at the edge of their frame the calculator, and they didn't view it as a competitor. And then within a few years, they were wiped out. It didn't matter if they had a 400-year history. They were gone, redundant, gone. So something they viewed, they said, oh, it's a cheap device from Japan, it's not going to appeal to our customers. Hang on, it gave the customer a utility, an experience of value that was easy. So, just type in that, done. And similar thing when Honda came to the US with its small motorbikes, and Harley Davidson and the other big manufacturers were like, oh, these are Honda bikes, they're not a threat to us, they're irrelevant. And Honda got a huge hold in the market, and then soon it managed to then go into the bigger bikes. So, on the edge of our frames, many companies are focused on looking what's in the middle of the frame, directly in front of them. And they forget what's on the edge is soon going to come in the center. And it's going to be the same with 5G-enabled glasses, with the metaverse, with AI on the edge, etc. Then this period 2025 to 2030, which is not far away now, probably I'd even say from 23 and 24 onwards, we're going to go through more rapid change in human society and business overall than we did since the start of the Industrial Revolution. And so we'll go through, like I said, over a 5 to 7 year period, much more rapid change than we did over 200 to 300 years, even the last thousands of years, since perhaps human society started to, build around cities and towns and etc. and agriculture. So very rapid change coming. And that means even some of the people that today view themselves as disruptors will be disrupted themselves. So you have to be very agile, and you have to think creatively, and you have to have a very different mindset. So flexibility is going to be key in this kind of period of very rapid change.
No, absolutely, and I think the business models will become quite even relevant as we go forward. And I was just imagining, we were talking about glasses. Imagine that there'll be an advert right in front of my eyes at a point in time, instead of me looking at a hoarding or looking at a screen. You can't take my attention off it. It will come
And
right in my face.
personalized real time on the fly. So
Absolutely, it's going to be a
exactly
game
what we're
changer.
doing. I could be walking around a shopping mall. Sorry, Tony was going to say something.
No, work away, Imtiaz Adam, when you're done.
I could be walking around a shopping mall, the high street, wherever, and because that store, I have a digital account with that store. That store can actually tell me, here's something highly relevant to you on your set, that you're after, or upsell, cross-sell, combination offer. Buy this item, and by the way, get this other item, 20% off the combination. Or here's or if they're an upmarket retailer and they don't want to do discounts, it can be, here's our latest, come and see our latest range. This might be more relevant for you, what you're looking for. So things that are directly relevant, hyper-personalization at scale. I know that sounds like a contradiction, but that is the world we're going to, hyper-personalization at scale. Because if it's coming on your glasses, you want it to be entirely relevant to you. I want to see spamming on my glasses that is irrelevant to me. I'm going to delete that thing and block it. So you need to be very, very hyper-personalized and entirely relevant. And it's going to be interactive. Interactive is the key. It's not going to be one-way communication that we have right now. It's going to be actually with this immersive and interactive thing with AI enabled, where I can start actually discussing with the AI enabled agent. Actually, that combination you've offered me, can you offer me a different combination? And then maybe I'll make that purchase.
Exactly. And to extend to that, you would be able to live stream maybe from your glasses. What you're watching is like being live streamed somewhere else if you want to. And maybe that will blur the line between competition as well, because what that will mean is that if I'm walking through an aisle and I see that the price is this, someone else would know what the price is as long as I'm watching it. Possibly this is going to have a huge impact, Tony.
Yeah, I think look, Intimus makes a really good point, and I think if you look at the likes of Alibaba, they're bringing the digital world to the physical world, and what they're about is how do you create that immersive, engaged customer experience. Right? So retail, they recognize there's social value. There's a whole lot of reasons why people get involved in retail or go to shops or stores, whatever. But they've also recognized, well, you need to pull it all together and create that experience that Intimus is talking about, where you walk in, the store is talking to you, it's giving you recommendations, it's doing things for you, but it's all part of a connected platform. It's not another standalone thing. It's all joined up, and it's all predicated on an understanding of the customer. So I think the potential is huge. And just another point, just drawing on one of the things Intimus said earlier in terms of sustainability. I mean, the old model was make the clothes, distribute them, sell them, whatever. The new model is make the model, let people buy them and customize them, and then make them so there's no waste. So the potential in terms of where we bring this is just quite enormous.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Let me get a bit technical, and I'm not going to ask you the business model question, Annapurna. We've had a good conversation on that. I want to get a bit more technical as you're there, and who else to ask that question. Can you please explain the difference between the enhanced mobile platform, massive machine type communication, and ultra reliable low latency communication with examples? Just dumb it down for people if you can explain that. How do you go about it? Sorry, I'm not putting you on the spot.
Okay. Okay, no problem. The thing is that whenever we are thinking about the 5G as a total, so we can say that the major 5G use cases or the service classes it offers are the three type, like enhanced mobile broadband, ultra reliable low latency communication, and machine machine type communication. So we already have seen the development related to transmission and develop the deployment of enhanced mobile broadband systems that we are going after, like whenever we are watching any HD video or live video streaming and everything. So those type of data, those type of services that has been provided, they depends on high data, they depends on high data rate, and it is we cannot say it a latency sensitive service, because latency of these type of services doesn't matter a lot, but it requires a very large bandwidth for the transmission of this type of signals or broadband signals. Now, when we come to the ultra reliable low latency communication, it is a game changer for the 5G, which was not there in the 4G. But if you can think about the 5G, so it enables various kind of mission critical services, like as already Imtiaz and Tony and you have also already mentioned about those applications, like where the latency becomes very crucial, and the reliability of those services where it is at most, like the remote healthcare system or remote surgery, or we can say it as a factory automation, where the precision of all the robotic arms that we are providing, the data, the control signal from the actuators, those require very high precision, high reliable data, where as Inti has already highlighted the point of outage, like the outage in a transmission should be minimum up to certain level. So it's up to some beyond the expectation level for the 4G. Now it has been offered by the 5G. So so we can say that the reliability of these data transmission should be more, and the latency is as low as 1 millisecond. It is not the data rate of these URLLC services are not so high, but those are very much latency sensitive services, like autonomous vehicle, the safety information, those who are being transferred, they should be transferred within few or fraction of millisecond to avoid those instances of accidents. So those are URLLC services. Now coming to the third part of the third service, which is offered by 5G, is massive machine type communication. So we can say that the Internet of Things like IoT services, they can come under that, where a massive number of devices, they are constantly transmitting or receiving data, and the amount of data which has been transmitted here is huge in comparison to other two services. Now here the number of devices are more, so coverage or capacity of providing these services should be at the utmost. These are not latency sensitive services, but they require, the most important thing is the energy efficiency of these kind of services. Now if we can categorize that, the bandwidth requirement for broadband services are very high, and data rate requires very large. For URLLC services, it's reliability and latency, and for machine type communication, it's the coverage or the capacity and the energy efficiency to accommodate a large number of devices into that. So we can say that the IIoT or IoT devices, they are coming under the massive machine type communication.
Okay, that's quite complicated and quite extensive, guys. If you've got a technical question, you've got the expert on the panel, so please put that in the comment section. I'll take that anyways for her. So let's move on. Let's get a bit more on the risk side of 5G. One thing that comes to mind, I remember last year, a lot of people said that COVID was a byproduct of 5G because there is 5G on, so COVID is there. And that was a lot of rumors going on. So let's talk about the risks. And I know that was just bullshit, but let's come to the risks of what 5G can bring to the table, other than those rumors. Cybersecurity, is that going to have an impact on it? So Tony, let me come to you. What do you think would be the risks of 5G as it comes in driving in the next coming years?
Look, I suppose risk comes on a couple of levels. One is, if your organization is dependent on a major provider for any technology, that creates a risk, and you need to be conscious of it and need to manage that. Another is in terms of, obviously, if you miss the boat, that's clearly a big risk. But another one in terms of is, how does that integrate with everything else you're doing? And can you have the law of unintended consequences, where you do something and suddenly other things start to fall over? But a downside risk, as I see it, is that, look, the potential to use 5G to drive the collection of data and insights and everything else. And I think organizations need to be very clear in terms of, their data policies, their privacy policies, how they're going to use customer data to make decisions, how they understand that if, algorithms are making the decisions, not how to write the algorithms, because I couldn't do that, but what they do need to understand is, well, what are the outcomes being driven by these algorithms? And how does that manifest in terms of, customer outcomes, stakeholder outcomes, market outcomes? Because if you get these things wrong, not only is it bad for your business and your reputation, but if it's a regulated industry, you're into a whole realm of conduct risk. So there are risks, and they're at multiple levels, and it's really around working those through. As with any technology or anything you're doing in your organization, you need to go through and sort of say, well, what are the risks, and if that was to happen, how big would it be, and what impact would it have? There are plenty of risks, but there's plenty of upsides too.
Good stuff. Imtiaz, what do you think risks of 5G would be? Cyber warfare?
Yeah, so thank you, Shailendra. I think building upon what Tony said, so taking a step back, 5G is non-ionizing radiation, so it's actually less dangerous than sitting in sunlight, for instance, and it absolutely had no correlation with COVID. The big risks with 5G are as follows. One is device, because on the one hand, 5G and standalone 5G in particular is going to facilitate massive, as we said, device to device and machine to machine connectivity, and increasingly AI at the edge. However, unfortunately, many manufacturers of devices or IoT devices haven't focused as much on the security elements so far. And so, whether, as Annapurna will note, the network slice, you could actually use one device to infect the entire slice, and then ultimately the entire 5G network. So you could basically engage in cyber warfare across an entire region or entire country, doing DOS attacks, denial of service attacks, that is, or by taking hijacking devices and getting them to do massive attacks to bring down to disrupt a hospital, or you can basically use it to send through the entire network through the device level. So device security is something that is going to become much more prevalent going forwards in that era of 5G, and that we need manufacturers to think about and collaborate on, manufacturers of devices, because that is slightly beyond the hands of the telecom companies. The other thing is going to be, coming to Tony's point about disinformation, etc., of which 5G itself was a subject of, and and data misuse, is that we will be able to, certain actors or bad actors will be able to take disinformation to a new level, because in this immersive environment of the metaverse and 5G-enabled glasses, where you can have AI agents or people pretending to be someone who they're not, or using deepfakes, etc., technology at a more advanced level in the future to spread complete disinformation and make people believe things, that a war event is going on, certain people were guilty of certain things, etc. So absolutely, we're going to have strict standards of governance to think and how to handle these things. The other thing is going to be the fact that the data harvesting. So on the one hand, let's not forget that the AI revolution and the big data revolution has been built around the internet and mobile, and in recent times, particularly by mobile and 4G. 3G to 4G has really led to that explosion in data and in turn enabled the growth of AI. And as we go into 5G, the era of standalone 5G, over the next few years, it's going to be a different order of magnitude. So, for example, IDC Seagates say that by 2025, 175 zettabytes of data will be generated, which is approximately 3 times the entire data created in 2019 or 2020. Now, interestingly, 1/3 of that, according to IDC Seagate, will be real-time data, or data consumed in real time. So again, we're talking about the entirety of data created in 2019 or almost 2020 being real-time generated data. So yes, you'll need AI to make sense of that data, but equally it means that we're going into a new paradigm, a new world where federated learning is going to have to be a key tool. So a lot of data will be siloed, created on devices around the edge, rather than right now, most of the AI is in the cloud and a remote cloud server. Your client when you use your mobile is fetching that back, and the intelligence is running in the cloud. In the future, increasing a lot of the intelligence will be on your mobile, on the devices around you, maybe on your glasses, etc., around your home, around the factory, around a hospital. And so a lot of the data will be siloed. And federated learning with differential privacy is going to be a key tool, because do you want Mr. Zuckerberg to be watching everything you're seeing and doing? No, of course you don't, especially around your home, etc. So differential privacy can mean that with federated learning, you can still get a personalized journey that machine learning enables, but without someone collecting all your data in a centralized way or harvesting it all. So these technologies are going to be really important. Also, federated learning with differential privacy can also be applied to security. There are a number of studies showing its potential there to try and not only provide data security and data privacy, but also to try and intervene with localized malware before it infects the entire system at a global level. So collaborative learning with federated learning is going to be really important, whether it be autonomous cars, metaverse, 5G-enabled glasses, etc. That is something where I feel policymakers and the industry need to get together, because right now you've got disaggregated or different approaches, which is fine, except you need something that's going to be interoperable, ideally, because Google has its federated learning, Apple has its, etc. But you need something ideally like the academic researchers from Flower being producing, that will go and operate across different standards. Doesn't matter if it's iPhone or iOS versus Android versus Python versus Java, whatever. That in actual fact, the hardware that is hardware agnostic, that is a framework agnostic, and will enable this scaling at an interoperable level, is going to be really, really important if we're going to secure our hospitals, secure autonomous cars, and live in safe environments at home. We really need federated learning with differential privacy to scale, and for, in my view, regulators and industry participants to come together and go, yep, we'll build this collaborative learning capability. We'll put the governance standards around it, like Tony said, and we'll make this a better and safer world.
Good stuff. Annapurna, any risks that come to your mind?
Yeah, already Imtiaz and Tony have highlighted very good points about it. So when we are thinking about the privacy and security issue, so whenever we are thinking about inclusion of machine learning techniques or machine learning algorithms for these enabling these 5G services, so in that case, we know that the ability of ML is to swiftly overcome to the changing situation that has enabled some having through some fundamental tools. So this computer security like intrusion detection or cyber physical attacks for this wireless system, so everything as we know that there are some of the limitations of ML algorithm in practice, so they might be subjected to these adversarial attack. So we can say that since there is a wide circulation of the data which has been collected, so it is inevitable for the ML application. It would be important to consider the aspects like data security and privacy, such as authentication and authorization, or we can say it like regulatory requirements or the rotation of secure keys or certificates in that, and the software security model, the requirement of designing the security model and privacy policy need to be adequately understood to achieve uniform security across the wireless system that we are looking for, the end-to-end system. So it should be well adequately understood, and this is particularly important because ML, machine learning algorithms or machine learning models, they are run on multiple components, like often stacked upon each other to build the end-to-end solutions. So for that reason, understanding the security model is very much important. And similarly, when we are thinking about thinking about this cognitive effect or cognitive models for this ML prediction, so in those cases when the data has been shared, the collective data has been shared from various devices to a central controller or a central cloud server. So they are vulnerable to security threats, and those threats are very important to be tackled. So it can be only be done through distributed learning, as Imtiaz already mentioned. So whenever we are dividing the learning process from the edge to the controller, so the basic learning has been done at the edge nodes, and the interpretable results or the prediction results only, they are transferred to the central controller. So it reduces the risk of being the intrusion attack, or reduces the risk of getting security threats. So these kind of levels of understanding from end to end design of the communication for 5G model from each architectural level has to be understood and designed properly.
Mm. Uh, Sticking to you, Annapurna, do you see any applications of machine learning in the wireless network itself? And how is it tackled? Can you give an example? I was thinking, could we predict the failure at different points of a 5G network? I don't know. You're the expert.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, those are the basic things whenever we are thinking about any kind of 5G network. So, as Tony have already mentioned about the industries, those who are transforming their work to a newly digital world, or they are completely changing their operations, and they are trying to include the AI-based solution into, whether it be a financial solution, whether it be a healthcare solution. So everybody wants to include the AI based model, automation, and everywhere. So it's very important to understand the data what they have and what they require to make it a digitized one to get the better optimal result. So similarly, when we are thinking about the 5G network, so we can predict the behavior of the network by looking at the past statistical behaviors, like for example the time series analysis for financial services for predicting stock market. Similar concepts can be applied for 5G networks also. So for example, at a certain point when we are measuring the network traffic for a longer period of time, so we can see some patterns of or cyclic patterns of the network traffic. At certain point of day, the network requirement or the data bandwidth requirement being more, number of active devices being more, at certain time period it is being less. So it creates a pattern of observable data. So from those observable data we can relate and predict what can be the next, at the next moment, what can be the network traffic. So it can be called as a 5G network traffic prediction model. So for your example, this can be done. Here we can include the machine learning models to take those predicted output and use it for other purposes, like predicting any other scenarios, or in a certain use case, like in industry setup, when we can predict the traffic requirement accordingly, we can allocate the resources at that particular time. We can allocate the more bandwidth to those particular services at that particular time. So from those observations we can predict, from the predicted output we can pre-allocate those resources to optimize the entire work. So it can be end-to-end solution for a particular problem of wireless communication.
Okay, let me come to you, Tony. Tony, digital transformation we mentioned is going to be driven lot faster by 5G as we think. Any project or anything that you're doing at the moment which is a game changer, or you see a game changer in any of the industries where 5G is involved in digital transformation space?
Not particularly. What I think what we've seen is that organizations have en masse moved to the likes of Zoom and Teams and everything else. So suddenly there's a greater realization that connectivity actually is important, because in the past organizations probably talk about connectivity in terms of, well, how do we engage with customers. Now they're looking at their world actually could become very virtual, where they need to be connected, period, to everyone and everything in their ecosystem. So I think the learning of the last year for boards and executives has been, we had a business model that we thought was great. Maybe we didn't, but we had a business model, and suddenly the business model got challenged. And to keep the business alive, we had to do things we thought were never possible. So, like, if you imagine going into a boardroom 3 years ago and say, "Look, great idea, we're going to have 90% of our people work from home," it probably would have been a very short meeting. But I think that has changed, and organizations now realize that, look, if they want to attract talent, if they want to have people that they can tap into in any part of the world, that actually it's all about connectivity. So not just customers, but people, suppliers, everything. So I think the realization in terms of digital transformation is that this is a hyper-connected world that needs the likes of 5G, and it needs AI and other things that will support everything we want to achieve. And it's how do we get there? Because organizations haven't really thought about the paradigm that we're moving into. They kind of landed into it because of a pandemic, but now they need to think, they have a choice. Do they go back to where they were, which I don't think is feasible? Do they just keep doing what they're doing? Or do they say, well, we could change when we needed to change. So now let's change because it's the right thing to do. And let's look where we could bring this business into the future.
Good stuff. Imtiaz, let me ask you about the emerging opportunity that we see with 5G, IoT, and AI coming together. Any opportunities that you see? And I'm very, very quickly, guys, to the audience, very, very quickly, we're going to get to the audience Q&A. So if you've got a question, put that in the comment section and I'll take it in just less than 5 minutes. So please, 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 comments, questions in the comments, and don't forget to press the like button. Thank you very much. Imtiaz, emerging trends and opportunities that you see?
Yeah, I mean, if you take the example Annapurna gave, if the network itself is it's going to be dynamic, learning and dynamic, right? Responsive. So even the 5G network itself is going to be learning and responding, saying, okay, I need to allocate resources here in advance because I anticipate more traffic, right? Service level agreements will be dynamic, etc. But that translates ultimately back to, as Tony was saying, the business models of companies, organizations, firms, even individuals who are providing, set up as sole traders, which is that it's going to be a world that, I reiterate again, dynamic and interactive. Right now, today, even you look at viral things like TikTok, are still one way. You've got someone producing content and the other person consuming it. We're talking about a world with immersive technology, metaverse, 5G enabled glasses, enabled by AI, where things become interactive and dynamic. I could be watching a hologram of my favorite artist, and then us or some media, whatever, and I could actually want them to do something, the holographic version to do something else, rather than watching the same video again and again. I say, actually, now instead of turning right, I want you to turn left. And with GANs, generative adversarial networks with synthetic media, it will start doing certain things, virtually, etc. So it's going to be a dynamic world. Think of learning, for example, and educational technology. There's certain people want to have, certain students or even experienced people want learning something. Maybe one person has a problem with maths or a certain area of maths, a virtual tutor helping them fine-tune in that area, versus someone wanting to learn a language, having a problem with certain verbs or conjugations, whatever, pronunciations. It's going to be a very, very different world. And coming to that point, AI itself is going to be transformed. What we've had with the era of AI being dominant in social media and digital platforms is that in e-commerce, etc., when you gave a recommendation, when a AI agent on whether it's Google or whether it's Netflix or whether it's Amazon or whatever, or ASOS or whatever, if that recommendation was incorrect, it's a bad user experience, but you're not killed, you're not injured, etc. As we said before, Shailendra, when you were coming to this era of 5G, etc., and real physical interaction, an autonomous vehicle, healthcare, manufacturing facility, there's real world consequences when edge cases occur. And so we're going to have AI that increasingly is not just inferencing on the edge, but continuing to learn on the edge. It means working with small data, disaggregated data. So whilst there's going to be a big exponential in data being created, as Annapurna was saying, a lot of it's going to be decentralized and fragmented. It may get reaggregated up to the cloud eventually, but with real-time interaction, it means that our next level of AI R&D is going to be working with smaller data sets. It needs to be, there'll be a push on explainability, that's already happening, causal reasoning, that the AI agents are able to understand and infer what the causal consequences are of certain things. If I'm an autonomous car, if I turn right suddenly, I have to understand it's going to cause a crash maybe, right? Or if I see another vehicle swerving in front of me, I can understand what the consequence of that is, and therefore I need to make an evasive maneuver. So common sense, causal reasoning, explainability, all these things are going to be learning on the fly and working with smaller data sets are going to be really, really important in the next evolution of AI. And that's why we're starting to see there are new techniques emerging like liquid neural networks, which work with sparse networks, or known as neural circuit policies, where researchers from Vienna and elsewhere were able to make an autonomous car work with very sparse networks, which could do causal reasoning as well as being very explainable. We're seeing transformer models perhaps being combined with actually becoming multitasking. Because again, if you think with narrow AI in an autonomous vehicle, as a human, I'm not sitting there with multiple brains, one part processing, one part focused on computer vision, another part focused on language, etc., and other sense. I've got my brain, which is interacting together. Might be different regions of the brain, but I'm processing it together. And this likewise with the multitasking, multimodal networks, neural networks, and transformers, etc., which work with both computer vision and language together. These are going to be essential going forwards. So we're going into an era of broad AI. It's not AGI, it's not quite the level of the human brain, but it's beyond narrow AI. So that's where we're going to. Very exciting developments in AI itself are going to emerge in this era. Like I said, the 2D to 3D, automated computer vision to create these 3D agents. And again, this interactivity that an AI agent is going to have to understand language and computer vision together, be combined together to give you that fully immersive interactive experience. So learning on the edge, working with small sets of data, working in low resource environments. A lot of these devices, especially they're designed to be energy efficient and working on the edge, they're not going to have like when AlphaGo defeated Lee Sedol, the prevailing world Go champion at the time. I can't remember how many servers they used, but it was a huge number of GPUs and CPU servers. That's not going to work when you're trying to make an AI agent work on your glass or on a mobile phone, right? So they're going to have to, or sensors around you in low resource environments. So we're talking about making AI much more efficient as well going forwards. So there's going to a lot of very exciting research. I know Annapurna's been involved in some of it. A lot of very exciting research in AI going on, which is going to make AI much more usable in the real world as well.
Good stuff.
That's,
Before I get, sorry, Annapurna, you want to add?
no, that's the correct thing. We have to make these AI models usable, because randomly selecting the models and applying on a particular field, and when it comes to the real-time environment, it's not usable. And we need to constantly change the parameters to adapt it to the real environment. So that becomes a bottleneck. So it should be usable.
Good stuff. So, guys, before I get to the audience Q&A, two things that come to mind. One is, think about a touchscreen television. I don't know when is that coming, but that should be on its way as well, where you can actually touch and feel and interact with the video that's going on. Maybe you want to do a 3D view or whatever. I just mentioned virtual zoos where you can actually go to a zoo without going to the zoo, possibly, and yeah, that could be something that would be very, very interesting as we go forward. Okay, so let me get to the audience Q&A, and guess what? I've been asking Annapurna to sing a song for us or hum a song for us at the end, so please wait for that. Okay, let me get to the audience Q&A very, very quickly, and this is your last moment or last time to ask questions. Whatever you've got, just put that in the comment section. And here we go. Good stuff. Let's very quickly get to the audience Q&A. Let's start with the questions. Okay. Biswarup Dal said remote healthcare is one of the use cases that he saw. Okay. Now, Biswarup Dal says, also in the final Q&A session, can I ask how QML will help in moving forward towards 6G? Annapurna, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, sure. I will love to do that because whenever we are thinking about the inclusion of AI-based model and machine learning-based model, now the next thing comes to the recent research is in the field of quantum computing and quantum machine learning, because as we know that the number of data in the network is increasing day by day, and we can say that the big data collection and storage and everything, it's a big concern for the companies, those who are those who are working on this particular field. Now the computation of such processes, then the such space is also increasing day by day. So in these scenarios, if this quantum based solution or quantum machine learning based solution can be used, that will be a very good starting point, because we can think that quantum computer and quantum mechanics understanding of those things are very important. Now if we can know that it has the properties like quantum superposition and entanglement, already the use of quantum key based security solutions are available for the wireless communication. Now to the more advanced features of the quantum mechanics like parallelism can be used for parallelly computing a lot of data. And if you can specifically say that quantum federated learning, that means the parallelly running a large computation at the core of the core data center and at the edge, so it can reduce the search space exponentially, and it can be a faster to a very unprecedented level that it's beyond the computation currently, but the research is also going on. And definitely within the coming decade, the research, as the research will progress on this particular field, it will provide new paradigm for the 6G communication, that is, or we can say the beyond 5G communication.
Good stuff. Anyone else that wants to add? Imtiaz, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I absolutely think Annapurna hit the nail on the head, and by enabling the search space to be examined much more quickly. And look, we won't know until we really get there, but and often there are twists and turns that we don't anticipate. But one of the consequences of combining quantum machine learning with 6G networks could be, with the ultra fast speed, could be going beyond. Well, I think the 2020s will be defined, in my opinion, by 5G enabled glasses. But from 2020 in 2030s, it may be wireless, not chip in the brain, but wireless caps that you wear that allow brain thoughts, right, and communication, your thoughts interacting with objects around you. I don't know. That could be one possibility through 6G and wireless, and that's why, as Tony said, governance standards are very important now for the foundations we set in the future. we simply don't know where we're going to go. There are a lot of exciting potential there. But going back a step, I'd also say that with quantum computing and quantum machine learning, I think combining it potentially maybe with neuromorphic computing, spiking neural networks, is also going to be key to enabling this next generation of experience and broad AI and stronger AI capabilities. So that's going to be very, very exciting when these next generation of technologies start converging at the end from 2028 into the 2030s. And yeah, it'll be very exciting experiences.
Good stuff. Let me get to the next question quickly. And the next question is from Angelo. Angelo, my friend, he says, one of the challenges in harnessing and utilizing 5G and AI is the democratization of data. Privacy constraints prohibits this to a large extent. How does the panel think we will address this in the future and unshackle information so we create marked benefits to society that are larger to privacy and security concerns? Tony, do you want to have a go at that?
Well, I think it's on two levels. I think look, there's no doubt that every government in the world is now looking at this whole area and they're asking, well, who's got data and how are they using it? I think it's the responsibility of every organization to, consider how it is going to collect and use data. And, if they're not clear on that, and I mean, one of the challenges that I see is that because of technology, the potential to create, let's say, harm or bad outcomes at scale is huge. So if you're not clear in terms of this from the very outset, you're running big risks. I mean, we all want data. Every organization wants to understand their customers. But let's be clear in terms of setting down the foundations in terms of how we will use data, the ethics behind our data, everything that we need to do so that there's no ambiguity. Because if this goes wrong, it won't be a small incident. It will be a huge incident. And I think that's why at this point in time, there's a lot of focus coming from governments in terms of, how are big organizations that are harnessing data, how are they using it, and is that in the customer's interests?
Good stuff. Imtiaz, do you want to add?
Yeah, and I come back to federated learning with differential privacy. That's going to be very, very important. It's going to be the key, in my opinion, the key tool to unlocking areas like healthcare, financial services, etc., and working with siloed data that will also be in manufacturing and safely with autonomous vehicles. Although, as Annapurna said, there's still the risk of adversarial and poison attacks there. There is research going on how we can try and mitigate that, and that will continue. So I think federated learning with differential privacy is going to be very, very important. The other one is synthetic data. And I think the rise of the metaverse in itself will also help facilitate massive increase in synthetic data. So that in actual fact, we'll be able to, instead of using like your personal data, a lot of machine learning will rely on synthetic data to create those, better experiences, etc. As long as the synthetic data is sufficient quality and realistic enough. So a combination of synthetic data along with federated learning and differential privacy. And then the third strand will be the point that Tony made, which is good governance and transparency. All these three pillars together will be key.
Good stuff. Annapurna, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more point. So, whenever any machine learning algorithms we are using to optimize certain problems or certain parameters of the uh, simulation or wireless network, at that time, when we are using synthetic data for training a particular model, then what happens, it starts learning the patterns which has been used for generating those synthetic data, or learning the relation between the equations or mathematical form which is used to learn create those data. So models are taking those patterns what we have used for generating those data. When we are using the same models in the outside world to learn the unseen data, at that time it becomes a very challenging situation to tune the hyperparameters accordingly, to tune all the levels, all the layers of neural network and all the components accordingly. So it takes a lot of time to make the model usable in the particular real scenario. So this is this one point I wanted to add.
The one thing I'd say, and some of that's called the sensorial gap, right? The gap between the real world effects and the simulated data. And so what we're seeing after now is, for example, Google and others using virtual reality, and that's in examples with robots and also medicine training surgeons, where virtual reality gets used and then GANs are applied, state-of-the-art GANs, to replicate those scenarios so that the machine can keep on learning. The important thing is for the GANs to create data sets, synthetic data that is realistic and usable. So again, that as long as that is the case, and I think with the metaverse, we'll also create so much data that will be synthetically replicable or variable that will have a lot of AI agents learning from that. But yeah, the challenge is that the real world is messy and chaotic, and random things can happen in the real world. So that's always the simulation to reality gap. But hopefully, we'll be getting that gap will be narrowing as we go across this decade.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, I think, is that in the real world, consumers don't always act in their best interests. And that might sound strange, but consumers do things that are not the right thing for them. And we can learn that very quickly, and we can exploit it. So it's making sure that there is a human agency factor where as people were standing back from the data and sort of saying, does that feel right? And am I comfortable that these are the type of outcomes that are coming out of what we're doing? So it's really important that we realize that this is a world where people don't necessarily do what is best for them. They do what might be expedient or whatever. And just because they thought it was a good experience doesn't mean it was a good outcome. And the onus is on the organization to understand that.
Interesting. Okay, I don't want to take more time on this. Let's move on. Next question is from Angelo again. He says, see that 5G and AI will be of greatest benefit to healthcare. Online AI-driven diagnosis, but more importantly, surgeries using robots in the theater and a doctor thousands of miles away need network and speed to do this. Absolutely, absolutely agree with you, Angelo. We mentioned that, we said that a few times, and yes, anyone wants to add anything to it? And we've discussed this a number of times. Or should I move on?
Yeah, these type of healthcare solutions, as I have already mentioned, these are coming under mission critical communication, and we can say it's a URLLC use case, where the reliability or precision of the information and the delivery of the information within few milliseconds, fraction of millisecond, is very much important, because a small delay in the network or delivery or reliability loss will lead to a fatal accident or a disastrous situation in the healthcare solution. So for those reasons, the proactive deployment of network for offering such constant communication or network failure has to be checked for offering these type of services.
No, and I totally agree with you. If a network failure happens in the middle of a surgery, imagine what that can
Yes.
do. So we need to be cognizant of that. Okay, let's get to the next question. This is from Mike Nash, and he says, "Hi everyone, great discussion, Shilendra. You asked about the use case 5G AI use case. Yeah, the speed of transmission will democratize the use of machine vision everywhere, which will transform human technology interactions. What are your thoughts, guys? Who wants to go?"
So computer vision, yeah, I mean, as we discussed, not just speed, but the ultra low latency, which will mean that will extending to really helping make things like virtual reality, augmented reality, and crucially mixed reality, the hybrid in between, work effectively, much more effectively than they can do with 4G. But also, like you say, whether it's object detection occurring on a edge device, be it a camera, a security camera, be it a car, an autonomous car or drone, and but also it's not apart from the vision, it's also computer vision occurring in near real time, or happening very fast. it's the ability to combine that with other things like I said, multimodal transformers, being able to understand the language aspects. Maybe it'll be composite AI or some neurosymbolic, because some of it's referred to, which is the ability to then understand the meaning of that data and the causal elements to respond dynamically. So again, I think the key upshot is that we're going to a world where we're looking at near real-time interaction and dynamic responses, including from the AI agent, to that uncertain world that it is encountering, and making sense of that world in near real time.
Okay. Anyone else? You want to add, Tony, anything to it?
No, I think Imtiaz has hit it on the nail there.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Do you think this fusion of technology will open up new opportunities we have not thought of? Also, do you think the companies that are more agile, receptive will benefit first? What do you think?
Yes. Absolutely. Look, I mean, the opportunities. I mean, look, it's like everything else. Technology comes along, and then that changes, the type of services that can be provided. That changes the type of behaviors that happen. So I think, the real challenge here is to understand the power of the technology in terms of, what can it do in terms of customers, and how can it be harnessed through your people. And I think if you're agile and, open and responsive to, the type of changes, and, not waiting for it just to happen to you, looking at these and sort of saying, well, you know what, for us to be able to do this, wouldn't it be great if we could? And then asking, well, okay, well, what technologies could help get us there? So I think the simple answer is yes. And I think every organization needs to be thinking about, the future is going to be different than it is today. There are so many different things happening at a technology, societal, political, you name it, level. And it's around trying to figure out, well, which of these things do we really need to get right? Because if we don't get them right, we're going to be out of business. But if we do get them right, it's going to advance our business, and make us much more successful and much more relevant.
But just adding on to that, if you don't mind, Shalindra, I mean, expanding on what Tony said, here in I'm sitting in London, and we've had 3 storms in a week. But on Friday we had a very severe storm. But in the morning it was sunny. It was sunny and calm, and I went out to get my coffee. But on my way back, suddenly, bang! The storm came, and I'm not exaggerating, 2 trees were blown down in front of me. Fortunately, I was a bit of distance away, and then a number of buildings got structurally damaged. We're in a calm before the storm right now. We're in a calm because next year onwards, when standalone 5G really expands its reach, when 5G enabled glasses with mixed reality are expected to be launched by the likes of Apple and Meta, which is the former Facebook, and Microsoft, etc. That's when the storm's going to happen, and that the pace of change just explodes. And we can see the examples in recent history where when the smartphone came out, when the original iPhone was launched, how quickly the consumer adopted, and that whole market changed. And then the world went towards mobile apps, Android, etc. came out with Google and others, and the world went to mobile applications. And when the internet originally came out, and how quickly the world started to gravitate to that as well. So the iPod and the way that affected the music industry, and now music streaming. Tony gave the point of how that disrupted the whole business model. That in actual fact, who buys CDs today? And yet, I have a good friend who sold his company to Sony for a couple $100 million, and as he's in the music industry, and he said he was going to the record companies and saying, the internet is here, digital is here in the late 90s. Let's get together and partner. I've got this platform. Let's do things together. And he said they used to laugh at him and say, "You're a lunatic. CD sales are going up. We don't need you." And of course, their CD sales kept on going up and up. And then, bang! iPod and other things come out. More music streaming. 4G came out, enabling these applications. Spotify, CDs were dead, and those physical stores died mostly. So they missed an opportunity to respond to and take advantage of that. And this is going to happen at a much faster scale now over the next few years, that a storm is coming We're in the calm before the storm. So whilst there are some business leaders who go, I've heard this all before, this is all hype, um, I don't see this happening right now. Well, let's have that conversation again in 18 months, in 2 years. Let's see, because this is the calm before the storm.
Annapurna, you want to add something?
No, I totally agree with Imtiaz and Tony. But this technology fusion, yeah, definitely it's going to add a new opportunity to what we say. From the technical point of view, I can say that every addition of every inclusion of technology into facilitating this communication model and to be reachable to each and every one is definitely is going to be a new opportunity, open new possibilities rather than, I can say.
Absolutely, and that gives me in my mind an example or a use case that says, you would be wearing a glass, you will be wearing glasses, and you look at Tony, and suddenly you will see Tony's LinkedIn summary here, so you know who Tony is, where he comes from, and you don't have it's personalization at its best, and you could then have a conversation with Tony and possibly look at Aruna and say, well, oh, Aruna, these are her interests. So when you have a conversation, you know what you're talking about to her and so forth. So I think we're up for something very, very interesting as we go forward. And I would really like to see that as we go. Okay, let's get to the next question. Otherwise, I'll be dreaming even further. Okay, Mike says, technically, do you think that the new mobile GPUs with Open RAN architecture will transform 5G AI further? Um, Annapurna?
Yeah, whenever we are thinking about the privatization of the network or Open RAN alliance which has been created, so every industry, every operator, network operator, they are trying to contribute into that and making it public for the citizens to contribute, to the network providers to contribute, and everyone is trying to make it more affordable for the customer, those who are using that these random access networks, those who are being already, it has been isolated and it has been controlled by certain companies only. So to make it more affordable, yes, whenever we are thinking about pushing intelligence to the edge, at that time these kind of high-end performing GPUs which has been used in these cell users or edge users, so that they can definitely going to help. And yes, inclusion of AI based models, and they will definitely be benefited with this one.
Hmm. Good stuff. Imtiaz,
Just
you were saying something?
yeah.
Yep.
So the explosion of AI chips coming onto things like smart mobile, making them intelligent, is going to be a huge driver of edge intelligence. Deloitte in 2019 said it would be 1.5 billion AI chips by 2024. I think Counterpoint Research were more bullish, and they said it would be approximately 2 billion by the end of this year or early next year. So increasingly, as users upgrade their phone, customers upgrade their phones to the latest smartphone technology, they're not just getting a smartphone, they're getting an intelligent phone, which is going to have AI capabilities embedded on it, on the device itself going forwards. And that's going to be the case with smart watches and other things as well. That increasingly we're going to have AI chips on them. So that's going to drive, as we said, a lot of that AI capability occurring in near real time, and also being responsive to the user, and also being able to work with smaller sets of data is going to be key going forwards in low resource environments.
Good stuff. Let me move on to the next. Annapurna, you wanted to add?
No, no, that was a good question, very good question, in fact.
Good stuff. Next, Angelo says, the faster the network, the faster and the bigger the security breaches can be, unfortunately. He also says that fantastic session and engaging topics. We can talk for hours. Absolutely. Next comment is from Chandray Saha. He says, hi Chandray, if I've got your name right. How the data visual optimization can be achieved with 5G algorithms. Annapurna, you want to have a go?
Okay, the data visualization optimization. So first, whenever we are thinking about implementing the algorithms to optimize the data we have, so understanding the data is very much important. That means whenever there is a particular problem, like for example, optimizing the throughput of a network, or optimizing certain characteristic or energy efficiency of a network. So in those cases, whatever the data we are getting from the network, we have to first understand the behavior of that data. We have to find out the correlation of those data with the desired result, desired values we want to optimize. So yes, first doing the data analysis should be the first step before implementing into any kind of 5G algorithm, or any kind of algorithmic implementation, or start of any kind of optimization. Yes, that's very much important.
Mhm. Okay, Imtiaz, you want to add?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, as Annapurna said, it all starts with the data, and so understanding the data, visualizing it, exploring it carefully, exploratory data analysis is key, and that will continue even more so with 5G, because 5G is going to be open sourced and software driven, a software driven network that's going to be dynamic. So your ability to visualize the data and predict, as the great use case that Annapurna gave of where your traffic's going to be, where you need to allocate your resources in advance. Visualization can really help in that as well. It can help, so spotting where you might have problems and predicting those, where you're allocating your resources. All of that's going to be key. And ultimately, you can also transfer that back to the manufacturing setting with your clients and start showing them, this is where we think you might have pain points in your factory. Ultimately, we'll even get, digital twins, etc., where you can try and simulate in advance and try to predict the bottlenecks before they occur, and therefore be responsive and planning in ahead. That is where we're going to, very much.
Good stuff. Okay, let me get to the next question, and hopefully we'll be able to finish this soon. So Shruti Singh says this data advancement is more likely to be beneficial for different sectors. What do you think? What do you think will affect more among different verses? So which sector is? So a question, I think, as I understand, is which sector will be impacted much more than the other? I think all the sectors, but Tony, what do you think?
I think this is more a question of mindset than industry. I think the great businesses use data, and to Smith's point, it's real-time data, and they're understanding what the data is saying. So I think every sector can benefit. And it's, I went to organizations that say, well, we're investing in this CRM system and this, that, and the other. And I say, oh, that's great. Why are you doing that? Well, it's going to give us all this data. And I said, but you have all this data here you don't use. So what's going to be different? So I think the real challenge here is, do I have a mindset that's going to be predicated on using data for customer insights to make real-time decision making? Because if I don't, I'll be continuing with the accounting view was, well, what happened last year or last quarter, and that's just not good enough.
Mm-hmm. Imtiaz?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Tony nailed it, which is that it's the mindset and being able to be responsive to it. Yes, areas like healthcare may go through huge transformation. As we discussed last week, it's still going to take time for the regulators to fully, enable that. However, it will ultimately really transform healthcare. But every sector, like I said, education, a lot of students have had to have remote education during the COVID period. Having an immersive experience with a personalized tutor that can help individual students on areas that everybody's different. Everybody has, some people might find certain things more difficult. So being able to help them on those, and retail, gaming, entertainment, finance, insurance, every single sector is going to be transformed. And again, our imagination is the limit. So I'd hate to say it's going to be one sector more than the other, because I think it's literally a whole world that is going to be completely transformed, like you said, Shailendra.
Good stuff. Okay, finally, the last comment comes from Angelo saying, engaging topic and great discussion. Thank you to the participants and you, Shalendra. Similarly, Mike Nash said, fantastic answers, ton of insights, lots to think about. Thank you, panel, Mike. Okay, so those were the questions. And now, before we end the session, Annapurna, if you can hum a few lines for us, that'll be great. The stage is all yours. I will give you full-fledged attention for next whatever time you want to take. Here we go.
Okay, thank you everyone, but you need to bear with my voice.
No
Okay.
worries.
No, that means I'm out of practice for a few months or years, so no problem. But as a tribute to late Lataji, so I just want to have one line from her song, which is very popular. Uh, अजीब दास्तां है ये, कहाँ शुरू कहाँ खत्म, ये मंजिलें है कौन सी, न वो समझ सके न हम. Thank you.
Thank
Actually,
you.
I'm thinking about Imtiaz and Tony because they are not familiar with Hindi.
Well, you see, I
Oh,
know my limitations.
I understand Hindi.
Unless someone's going to build an avatar that's going to do the singing for me,
Oh,
there won't be any singing from me.
great.
Good stuff. So
I,
that was it. That was wonderful, Annapurna. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for 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 coming in and singing it for us. Otherwise, people would say, "Oh no, I don't want to sing. I don't want to do that." I say, great. Thank you very very much. Really really
You.
appreciate it. It was a pleasure, and I think audience we loved this. Hope you enjoyed all of this. So if you did, please put a thumbs up and like and share it with as many people as possible. Guys, thank you, Imtiaz, thank you, Annapurna, and thank you, Tony, for your time. It was pleasure having you all here and taking your time out. And thank you very much, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys. It was wonderful talking to you all and answering the question. Thank you.
Thank
I like
you.
it. Brilliant singer, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Okay, so there is a last. There is a comment from Mike. Says amazing voice, Annapurna. Well done. Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. And yep. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, or if you didn't, just press the like button. Just because more and more people should learn from these guys. They've given up their 2 hours of their life, which they want to spread the awareness around AI and 5G, and so they did that out of their kindness only. So please like, share, and share it with as many people as possible because people need to learn what AI and the 5G technology can do to it. So thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and share this video, this episode. And also, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, then press the follow button. If you're watching this on Twitter, press the follow button. If you're watching this on YouTube, press the subscribe button and the bell icon. And if you're watching this on Facebook, then share this video with as many people as possible on different groups which are AI focused, so more and more people can learn from this video. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next week, possibly same time. So take care and bye now.